The Canal du Midi opened in 1681. That's 80 years before the Bridgewater Canal in England. We flew Ryanair from Manchester to Carcassonne for our week sailing the Canal du Midi and its branches. Our pre-arranged taxi took just over an hour to bring us from Carcassonne Airport to Salelles d'Aude. We have one night in Les Volets Bleus, a rather nice guest house or B&B. Salelles is not on the main line of the Canal du Midi, but on the Canal de Jonction. Les Volets Bleus is a late 19th century merchant's house, and the accommodation is very spacious. In the morning, it's only a 10 or 15 minute taxi ride to Le Sommeil, where we will pick up our boat, the Narbonne. Our first day's sailing will take us the long way round via the Canal du Midi and the Canal de Jonction and 4 locks back to Salelles. The operation of the locks is automated. On approaching the lock, one of the crew members gets off, walks onto the lock and approaches the control box, presses the button according to the direction you're going, and then the water either enters or leaves the lock to bring it to the correct position. The flow of water can be quite fierce. The boat can then enter the lock. When the boat is secured in the lock, another button is pressed, the cycle is completed, and the boat can then exit the lock. 4 hours or so after leaving Le Sommeil, we're arriving once again in Salelles, where we will spend our first night on board. The next day we will be continuing along the Canal de Jonction, onto the Canal Robine and through Narbonne. The automatic canal system doesn't wake up until 9 AM, so it's shortly after that when we start. The first lock leaving Salelles is a particularly deep one. In about half an hour, we're at the rather magnificent lock at the end of the Canal de Jonction, which also includes a dry dock. We briefly cross the River Aude and then enter the Canal de la Robine. After stopping for lunch at the edge of Narbonne, we continue through the locks in the centre of the town and under this rather remarkable bridge, the Merchant's Bridge. After sailing for several hours, we decide to turn round and find somewhere to park for the night. We sail through some rich-looking countryside and see Narbonne in the distance. By late morning, we have arrived in Narbonne city centre. The locks are even more fun when you have company. But we have time to do a little exploring of Narbonne and have lunch. The town hall is in the former Bishop's Palace. In front of it you can see a bit of the old Roman road, the Via Domitia. The unfinished transept of the cathedral. It was never completed, building was abandoned in 1340. The church consists solely of a choir with an apse. We set off again after lunch, rejoin the Canal du Midi, and spend the night once again at Salelles. The plan for the following day is to get back onto the Canal du Midi and head in the direction of Béziers. After traversing the 4 locks on the Canal du Midi, we're turning right onto the Canal du Midi proper. Some parts of the canal still enjoy the shade of many mature trees, but other parts have lost most of the trees through disease. The church at Capistong doesn't seem too far away, but it's about an hour by canal boat. Some of the thousands of new trees which are being planted to replace the ones which have been lost. At last, the bridge at Capistong. We moored for the night just outside the town because all the nearer berths had been taken. The heat of the afternoons was getting to be too much, so we decided to turn round here and head back the following day to Le Sommeil. That's a mobile snack bar. We're now passing the junction with the Canal de Jonction. Pulling in to Le Sommeil, where we will hand over the boat a couple of days early and head for an air-conditioned hotel in Béziers. It takes less than an hour by taxi to get from Le Sommeil to Béziers, and we are in the Hotel Imperator, right in the centre of the city, on the main shady tree-lined boulevard. Here it's being set up for the weekly Wine Thursday. Just a few metres away from our hotel is the early 19th century theatre. On another day it was the weekly flower market. The road is named after Pierre-Paul Riquet, who is responsible for the creation of the Canal du Midi, and he was born in Béziers, and this is his statue. The city has well-maintained public spaces and lots of cafes and restaurants of various types. The city centre has quite a lot of trompe-l'œil murals. Exploring the old city centre, we come to the Chapel of the Blue Penitents. This dates from the 14th and 15th centuries, but in the 19th century much of the building was lost and only the nave remains. The City Hall is on the site of the Roman Forum. There's another trompe-l'œil mural. The cathedral was built mainly between the 13th and 15th centuries, replacing an earlier cathedral which was largely destroyed in the Albigensian Crusade in 1209. In front of the cathedral there are views across the River Orbe. The old bridge dates from the 13th century. The aqueduct that carries the Canal du Midi over the River Orbe. As we prepare to retire for the night, the revellers at the Wine Thursday are getting into their stride. The little train gets through some very narrow streets in the old town. It provides a good view of the old bridge. There's a stop at the Fonserand locks, which raise the level of the Canal du Midi by 21.5 metres in a run of 300 metres. They're still referred to as the 9 locks, even though only 6 locks are actually in use. Looking back across the river at the cathedral. A stroll on our last morning brings us past the Église de la Madeleine from the 12th to 14th centuries, and Les Halles, the city's 19th century market hall. And soon it'll be time to be heading to the airport for home.